Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back in lecture number 22. Actually, we are going to discuss the second part of our previous lecture that was about skooks, the representative or the substitute of bonds in the market. And the summary of our previous lecture was that we studied the concept of skook and we discussed the basics of skook, like the definitions, the introduction and background, and also their marketability in the secondary market and the guiding principles of skook and what are their advantages for the issuers and for the investors, and what are the parties involved and the popular skooks. In skooks, and we discussed the mudarba, murabaha and ijara skook, and today we are going to continue the same towards some different skooks like skook, istisna skook and salam skooks, and then we will discuss the growth of skook. For example, when we see in the learning outcomes, so these learning outcomes actually they are the same as that of our previous lecture and they will include for this lecture as well. So you can take them for our lecture 21 and 22, which cover both skook part 1 and skook part 2. So you will be able to understand the definition, introduction and objectives of the skook and Sharia basis of skook issue that we discussed in the previous lecture also, that whatever kind of ijara is going to take place, that should the underlying product, that is musharaka, mudarba, salam, istisna, should qualify the legitimacy of Sharia. And the basics of skook we learned in our previous lecture, and also the skooks market, the skooks in the secondary market and the guiding principles and the advantages to the issuer and the investor, the parties involved. We discussed different parties, we learned them in the previous lecture, and also we discussed some of the popular skooks, and you will be able to understand in this lecture the remaining skooks, that is skook al istisna, skook al salam, and also the skook growth. When we look around in the world, what is the status of the skooks? Are they popular in the market? So that you will know in this lecture. And what are the controversies in different type of skooks? We will discuss them as well. And also we will learn some differences between the Islamic skooks or Islamic bonds and the conventional bonds. So istisna skook is also one of the applications of the popular skook modes. And istisna, as we know that it's a kind of order to the manufacturer to manufacture a certain required product. And istisna can be used for construction, for manufacturing, for different type of assets, maybe for the construction of infrastructure. So istisna skook can be used for that purposes. And istisna can be used for financing the manufacture or construction of houses, plants and equipment, projects, bridges, roads and highways. As I mentioned that it can be used for the infrastructure construction. And by way of parallel istisna contract with subcontractors, Islamic Bank can undertake the construction of any asset and its sale for a deferred price. So when the Islamic Bank enters into the contract with the subcontractor, because the Islamic Bank themselves, they are not professionals for the construction. So now they can enter into a subcontract with the construction, for the construction with the professionals, and then they can get the asset manufactured or prepared by the professionals. And full ownership of the constructed item is transferred to the purchaser against the deferred sale price that covers not only the construction cost but also profit. And when the asset is constructed, that asset is sold in the market, and the profits they are earned out of that and they are distributed among the skook holders. And in salam skook, salam sale is attractive to the seller, whose cash flow is enhanced in advance, and to the buyer, the salam price is normally lower than the prevailing spot price, giving him a profit margin. So here the catch for the investor is that the salam price which is paid at the spot for the deferred delivery of the asset is quite low than the market price, and when the asset is received, it is sold into the market at the market price, and the difference between the cost and the sale price will determine the profit. So at the time of purchase of asset using the salam sukuk capital, and then at the time of sale, the profits they are determined and they are distributed among the sukuk holders. And the possibility of having negotiable salam certificate is yet to be decided. So far, scholars are not inclined to accept it. So the salam sukuk certificates, they represent actually a claim. So the claim against an asset, but still that asset has not been in the possession of the salam sukuk holders or the SPV. So in that case, these sukuk holders, the sukuk certificates are representing only a claim, so that claim cannot be sold into the market. So murabha sukuk are more likely to be used in respect of purchase of goods by the public sector. So its procedure is all simple, that with the sukuk funds an asset will be purchased and it will be sold for a deferred payment basis, and in that deferred or installment payment the capital plus profit will be recovered. And in case the government needs items of huge price, it may purchase them through credit sale by paying in installment. So this type of sukuk arrangements, an SPV is created and funds are generated from the investors by the sukuk holders, and an asset which is required by the originator, by the issuer, maybe the government, that asset is purchased by the SPV and it is sold to the government, and the government will make the installment payments to the SPV, and SPV will distribute the profits and the principal amount to the investor, to the sukuk holders. And the seller will amortize the cost and return over a period of installment. So the cost of that asset which is sold to the originator, that will be paid back in installments over a period of regular intervals. And any murabha fund can also issue murabha sukuk, proceeds of which could be used for sale of assets on the basis of murabha to give fixed return to the murabha sukuk holders. And in this case, the fixed return can be made sure, because when an asset is sold at a profit, so that profit is known, and the return for the sukuk holders can be declared that this will be the return. This is the return can be fixed in that case. And then there are mixed portfolio sukuks or securities. So it means the funds generated using the sukuks, by selling the sukuk securities, those funds can be used in different ventures, maybe for the salam purposes, for the istisna purpose, or for murabha or musharka or mudarba purpose. So the banks may securitize a pool of musharka, ijara and some murabha, salam and istisna contracts, and return on such securities will depend on the chosen mix of contracts. So it depends upon the return from different applications of these funds, and according to the combination of different ventures, the returns will be determined and will be distributed among the sukuk holders. Now let's discuss the popularity of the sukuk, how the sukuks are growing in the world. Sukuks are gaining popularity as an alternate source of funding, and growth has been fueled by strong demand for Sharia compliant assets, because the Sharia compliance is being a buzzword in the Islamic world actually. So the people or the organizations or the central banks, they are becoming more and more conscious about the sources of funds, and they want the funds Sharia compliant, and there are certain regulations which are advising the governments, which are advising the banks that they should raise funds which are Sharia compliant. So the sukuk offers a very important and attractive forum. So many of the organizations, many of the banks all over the world, they are raising funds using sukuk certificates. Malaysia and Middle East have emerged as a key sukuk centers. Also issued in Germany, the sukuks, they are being issued in the Europe, like in Germany, Britain, Japan, Philippines, and Pakistan also has been issuing sukuks. And ijara concept is the most popular amongst the issuers of global Islamic securities. So the ijara concept has become more popular in these countries, and more and more skooks they are raised on the basis of ijara skook, where the asset is required by the issuer and it is purchased from the SPV, and SPV arranges funds from the skook holders. Now let me show you the growth of skook issuances in different parts of the world. So if you see, it started growing in 2001. So these figures, they are in billions of dollars. So you can see in 2001 they were quite less, almost 1 or 2%, maybe 1 or 2 billion dollars, and then they started growing really from 2003. So there was an exponential growth until 2007, and then there was a sudden drop in 2008. So this drop was because of the financial crunch, because of that financial meltdown that took place in 2007 and 8, and the skooks, they had their worst performance in 2008, but they again gained confidence, and again there is a rise in the skooks all over the world, that in 2010 it crossed $50 billion, and in the first half of 2011 it reached to almost $50 billion. So in the later half it might have grown to some other figures. So the latest figures have not been quoted here in these slides. So you can search for the latest figures and you can find the latest figures as well. And you can see the global skook issuance in different parts of the world. Like country-wise, if you look, Malaysia is having 58.1% share in the total issuances. So Malaysia is issuing more skooks than any other country. And then you can see for Qatar, UAE, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Pakistan, and others. So these are different countries. In 2011, these are the figures quoted from January to March in 2011. So these figures, they are in billions of dollars. So again, this has been mentioned in the previous slide. And this chart shows actually the figures of 2011 as well. In previous slide, we saw it only about 49 or 50%, near to 50%, but you can see in 2011, they were more than $80 billion. And then in the 2012, you can see until March, it has crossed $40 billion, and maybe by the end of the year, they might have crossed $90 or $100 billion. And it has been estimated in different sources that at the moment, the skook's total volume is $1.34 trillion at this moment. And it is growing all the time. And these are the monthly global skook issuances trend. If you look at the different countries, these are the monthly skooks which have been issued by different countries from September 2011 to September 2012, and maximum skooks, they were issued in January 2012. And the important thing to note here is that there is a rising trend. You can see here there is a rising trend, and the skooks, they are becoming popular all over the world. And if you look at the proportion of global skook issued by issuer types, so the corporations, for their businesses, they have issued 15.6% of the total skooks issued until September 2012, and the sovereign skooks, they were issued 66.07%, and they are the most, they cover the most part in that pie. And the government-related entities, they issued only 18.3% of the skooks in the total skook issuances until September 2012. And global skook issuance by currency. So in different currencies, you can see here the Singapore dollar 0.6%, US dollar 12.8%, and then Bahrain dinar, you can see 0.9%, Chinese yuan, and for other currencies like Indonesian rupee, and then Malaysian ringgit. So Malaysian ringgit has the maximum share in this pie. 83.9% of the skooks until September 2012, they were issued in Malaysian currency. So you can see for different projects, the Malaysian companies, their governments, their sovereign entities, they raised maximum amount of skooks, and they invested those amounts into different purposes, into different value addition, for different value addition purposes into the economy. Now let's see the global skook issued by structure, like for what, how much percentage is for ijara, for musharaka, and for mudarba. So the maximum share goes to Murabha. So Murabha has become a popular mode of financing in the banking sector as well, and the skooks also have been issued on the basis of Murabha, because when the managers, they arrange skook finances and they sell the securities to the skook holders, and with those funds they purchase assets, maybe for their own use or to sell them into the market, and they can know what is going to be their return. So in that case, the return is sure, and they can assure it by adding different types of guarantees. They can mitigate the risk better than in case of participatory modes like Musharka and Mudarba. So the maximum investment of the skooks goes to the Murabha, and the second best is the Ijara, and the third one is Musharka, then Salam, Wakala, Bayina, and others. But you can see the maximum share by these three modes: Musharka, Ijara, and Murabha. And in Musharka also, the diminishing Musharka mode is more popular. Now we can see the global skooks issued by economic sector. So what economic sectors have been addressed with the issuance of these skooks? The government has issued 66.09%, then the industrial manufacturing concerns, they have issued 2.8%, then IT only 0.1%, oil and gas has not issued any skooks at all, power and utilities 5%, and real estate 0.6%, telecommunication 1.8%, transportation 8.4%, and for agriculture, for different agricultural projects, it has been issued only 0.1%. So we have a huge potential in the agriculture sector, in the telecommunication sector, and the transportation sector, and we have a maximum of the share of the government sectors in the issuance of skook until September 2012. Now let's discuss some of the examples out of Pakistani experience. Like in Pakistan, WAPDA and for the construction of motorways, skooks have been issued. From WAPDA, skooks were issued for to increase the capacity or the capability of the Mangla Dam. Now we are going to discuss them in detail. First of all, the WAPDA skooks. The WAPDA financing requirement was 8,000 million rupees to partially fund the Mangla Dam raising project. So the project was to purchase turbines and to raise the level of Mangla Dam, and the key objectives of WAPDA were to raise financing in a cost-efficient manner, because skooks, they provide the most cost-efficient manner which is also Sharia compliant as well, and strengthen its presence in the local financial market. We don't see the presence of WAPDA as its strong presence is not felt in the financial markets. So this will increase by issuing these skooks, they can make their presence, their presence felt in the market, and they can diversify and cultivate WAPDA's investor base, and undertake a landmark transaction which will catalyze the promotion of Islamic financial instruments and lead the way for other public sector entities. So this can be a benchmark for the different public service entities to follow the same practice to raise funds using the skook mode of financing, and WAPDA took the step. And this was the transaction structure, where WAPDA in the beginning, they created a special purpose vehicle, and the name of that special purpose vehicle was WAPDA First Skook Company. Now this is the special purpose vehicle, and you should not be confused with the word special purpose vehicle. Actually, it is a company which is a separate legal company, separate legal entity from its issuer. So here WAPDA is the originator, which required certain assets, and for that purpose they established WAPDA First Skook Company. And that WAPDA First Skook Company, they issued skook certificates to the skook holders, which are the investors in the market. These investors may be the banks, may be the individuals, may be the governments. And then in return, the price was paid for these skook certificates. So Pak rupees skook funding, it goes to the special purpose vehicle, that is WAPDA First Skook Company. And then the WAPDA First Skook Company purchased turbines from WAPDA. and title of these turbines, it is transferred to the special purpose vehicle, that is Wabda First SCOOC Company. So the assets which were originally was identified by the Wabda, and Wabda might assume the role of an agent here. So as an agent, Wabda facilitated the purchase of assets, and it was transferred to the name of special purpose vehicle, which is Wabda First SCOOC Company, and the price was paid to Wabda. And there might be another situation that Wabda already owns these turbines and they want to raise funds to use them for some other projects. So in this situation, they sold turbines to the Wabda First SCOOC Company and they received the price, and the title or the ownership now is with the Wabda First SCOOC Company. And then there is a lease agreement between the Wabda First SCOOC Company and the Wabda. So this lease agreement will make sure that rentals, they are paid to the SCOOC Company, and those rentals, they are distributed among the SCOOC holders. And the SCOOC holders on the same time, they can trade their certificates in the secondary markets. So these SCOOCs actually, they represent an ownership into the turbines, and it is an asset. So these certificates represent an ownership into the assets, and depending upon the potential of this project, the SCOOCs, they can be sold into the market maybe more than its face value. This will be allowed according to Sharia. And this figure will further elaborate the transaction structure, that the Wabda will be paying the lease rentals to the Wabda First SCOOC Company, being the owner of that asset, and then these rentals, they are distributed among the SCOOC holders. So the Pak Rupees periodic lease rental coupons, the rental coupons, they are delivered to the SCOOC holders, and those SCOOC holders, they can convert these coupons into cash from the authorized banks by the special purpose vehicle, that is Wabda First SCOOC Company. And then at the time of maturity, these are the steps, that is, at the first step, Wabda would pay the exercise price to purchase the turbines. So at the time of maturity, the SCOOC holder will redeem those certificates against a price which is paid by the Wabda to the special purpose vehicle. And at the second step, the Wabda First SCOOC Company, which has received the price from the Wabda, now pays principal to redeem the capital. So against that payment, this SCOOC Company will redeem the SCOOC certificates, and the certificates, now they are redeemed, and then the turbines are sold against this payment. So the payment which was made at the first step, it goes all the way to the SCOOC holders, and then the title of those turbines which were sold initially, it goes back to the Wabda. So this was the transaction structure. It was an Ijara SCOOC, and Ijara SCOOC is becoming more and more popular nowadays. And this was the offer summary in this transaction. The principal amount which was required was 8,000 million rupees, and the periodic distribution. Now the rate or the return which was determined on 6-month Kaibor, Karachi Interbank Offer Rate. Now this is a confusion here. The Islamic banks, they use the Karachi Interbank Offer Rate or the London Interbank Offer Rate, which is an interest rate. So they use the benchmark of interest rates. They have not created their own benchmark. And this is one of the point of conflict among the scholars. And the tenure was 7 years. And the SCOOCs, they were being redeemed after 7 years, and privately placed local currency floating rate notes and trust certificates. They were known as trust certificates as SCOOC, and Wabda First SCOOC Company Limited was created as a special purpose vehicle which facilitated the sale of SCOOC certificates to the investors, and they received the SCOOC sale proceeds, and those cash, they were delivered to the originator, that was Wabda, against the price of the asset, which were turbines, and lessee was Wabda again. Now those assets, they were leased again to the Wabda, which was the owner of those assets previously. And underlying assets, Wabda's 10 Mangla Dam hydropower generation units. So these were the underlying assets. These were the subject matter of assets in this transaction. And the governing laws, they were under the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and all the rules devised by Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, they were taken care into this transaction. And the structuring advisor, the advisory bank was City Islamic Investment Bank. So this was the offer summary of this transaction. And for the second example of Motorway Skook, this is the offer summary. The principal amount required was $600 million, and rating agency from S&P rating agency, there was a rating for the issuer B positive, and then which is supposed to be a good rating. And then maturity date was January 27, 2010. And periodic distribution, the rental distribution or the returns, they were determined as 6-month LIBOR plus 220 basis points. So this point again, the benchmark was again the interest rate, which is the phenomena of conventional in financial system. And the pricing date, the Skooks, they were issued on January 18, 2005, and the settle date was January 27, 2005, and first coupon date was 27th of July 2005, and registered S only, and issuance format has been mentioned as REGS only, maybe a kind of format for those Skook certificates. And then structure of the Skook is the trust certificates, and they are called as Skook, and issuer is the Pakistan International Skook Company. This is a kind of special purpose vehicle in this case. And lessee is President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So these Skooks, they were issued by the government. And underlying assets, they are the highway land or the motorway, the asset which is going to be manufactured or prepared or constructed. So here the underlying asset is the motorway itself. And the joint lead managers are the book runners, they are the Citigroup. So these are and HSBCs. So these banks, they will provide different services regarding the running of this business, the recording of different transactions and receiving the finances and issuing the finances. So the banks of Citigroup and HSBC, they have this role. Now let's discuss the few of the differences between the Islamic bond or Skook and the conventional bond. So in case of Skook, we see income is generated from assets. Although the income is fixed, the return is fixed, as it was mentioned in the last two examples, that Karachi Interbank Offer Rate plus some basis point, it is fixed and it will be paid all through the duration of that contract. So, but still the returns are derived out of the asset. And whereas in conventional bonds, income is derived from debt instrument. So the bonds, they represent a debt, and an interest rate is mentioned on that certificate. Whatever business has been carried out with those bonds, may be carried out or maybe not. So there it is not mentioned on those certificates, on those securities, but an interest rate is mentioned. And return is expected. So the return is expected out of that investment, whereas return is interest and predetermined. In case of bonds, the return is sure and it is mentioned, but here you see, we looked in the previous slides, the return is also mentioned in the Skooks, but there is a clause in the agreement that in case of unavoidable circumstances, the returns might reduce below the returns mentioned, or even there might be certain situations when the returns are zero or negative. And the negotiability is restricted to specific type of Skooks. Only particular type of Skooks can be sold into the market. For example, the Skook holders, the Skook certificates which represent assets are tangible assets more than 50% if it is a portfolio of different Skooks. Only these kind of Skook certificates, they are tradable in the market. Otherwise, if they represent liquid assets or if they represent a debt, then they cannot be negotiated in the secondary market, and even if they are negotiated, they can only be sold at par value, not more than their face value, not less than their face value. Whereas the bonds, they are negotiable financial papers. The bonds can be negotiated anytime in the financial market, and the bonds, they can be sold more than their face value, and then they can be sold below their face value. And the Skook issue is a seller of asset. Skook issuer actually is a seller of the asset. And under the normal circumstances, what we see nowadays, the Skook issuer actually is the seller of the asset, as we saw in the example of Wabda, that Wabda was the issuer and they sold the asset themselves to the special purpose vehicle. Whereas bond issuer is a borrower. So in case of bond, the issuer is actually a borrower. Issuer has asked for finances and has borrowed the finances. And Skook holder is an owner of the asset. The Skook certificates, they represent an ownership into the underlying assets. Those underlying assets, they might represent a debt, they might represent a business, they might represent an investment, or they may represent an asset. Whereas bondholder is a lender. The bondholder actually has lended finances to the borrower. So the lender is going to receive the principal plus interest. So that is completely an interest-based mechanism. So in case of Skook, seller-buyer relationship is there. So just like if you see the SPV being a subsidiary of the issuer, so there is a relationship of buyer and seller. For a particular asset, the Skook holders, they make their investments. For a particular project, for a particular asset, which is already in existence or which is going to be established or manufactured. So for that asset, Skook holders, they are actually paying a price. Whereas lender-borrower relationship is there in case of bonds. And business risk-return relationship is there in case of Skook. If there is any risk attached to that business, that risk is actually the risk of the Skook holder. And in case of bond, issuer guarantees the payment of face value and periodic interest. So in case of bond, at the time of maturity, the face value is paid and the bonds are redeemed at the face value. And during the time period, during that maturity period, the interest payments have been made to the bondholders. So in case of, in that seventh point, business risk and return relationship is there in case of Skook, but practically we don't see that. We see an arrangement which is quite similar to that of bond. Like Skooks are issued where the returns are announced and the Skooks are redeemed at their face value. A third party would guarantee that in case of any damage or in case of any capital impairment, the loss will be guaranteed by the third party, which again constitute a controversy, and these controversies are already there, and the scholars, they have yet not been able to resolve all these controversies. In case of Skook, the risk actually lays with the underlying asset. So here the subject matter of this transaction is the asset. So if any risk is there, that is the risk of that asset. So if the asset loses its value, ultimately it will be transferred to the owners of that asset, which are the Skook holders. Whereas in case of conventional bond, major risk is with the issuer, that is the credit risk. So the issuer of the bond actually is the borrower. So the credibility of the borrower would depend in the performance of the financial performance of that company or that individual. So in that case, risk is with that borrower, maybe an individual, an entity, or any business. And return is expected from the underlying asset. Return is derived out of the asset, which is the subject matter of a Skook transaction. Whereas in case of conventional bond, interest payment is an obligation to the borrower. So the borrower or the issuer of the bond, they have to pay the interest, the periodic interest, maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, or every year before the maturity of that bond. And then at the end, bond will be redeemed at its face value. And at the 10th difference, returns of investors' capital cannot be guaranteed. So ideally, under the Sukuk transaction, returns of the Sukuk holders, they are not guaranteed. The returns may vary according to the performance of the asset. If the asset has been leased, so the rental amount will depend on the market forces, and there can be various amounts of rentals for different time periods. So accordingly, the returns will be different. Whereas in case of conventional bond, issuer is obligated to return investors' capital, and that is its face value. Now let's discuss few of the controversies in different Sukuk securities. Like in case of Sukuk al-Musharaka, like Musharaka Sukuk, some Sharia boards approved the structure or allowed their respective institutions to invest in such business deals. Others have prevented institutions under their respective supervision to invest in such Sukuk, viewing them Sharia non-compliant. So here in case of Musharaka Sukuk, some of the Sharia boards, which are the advisory boards of Islamic banks, they allow their banks to engage in Sukuk al-Musharaka, whereas some other Sharia boards, they don't allow their banks or their financial institutions to engage in Sukuk al-Musharaka, and they view that this is not allowed. So there is a controversy and there is a confusion, and that confusion actually ultimately comes to the market, and the individuals, they feel confused, and this adds to a negative perception of the Islamic banks. And disagreement arises on the permissibility for one of the Musharaka partners to give an undertaking to purchase the shares of units of the second partner of the Musharaka at the maturity of the Sukuk at face value and predetermined price. So what is the controversy here is that in case of Musharaka Sukuks, the Sukuk holders, they are guaranteed by the issuer, that is the other partner, that at the end of the tenure of this Sukuk, the Sukuk certificates will be redeemed at their face value. That is, the price is already fixed at the time of the contract. So fixation of price before the expiry of that time period is not allowed. So because after maybe 4, 5 or 6 years, which is the time period of that Sukuk, the value of the asset might have declined and it might have appreciated. So the fixation of price before knowing the exact status of the underlying asset is not allowed. So this is a point of conflict, and at the same time authorizing the return of the investor into the Sukuk securities, that is at the time of the selling the Sukuk certificates, returns, they are announced. So announcement of those fixed returns, again this is a point of conflict, and some of the scholars, they don't allow it, and some of the scholars, they think this is allowed because it is derived from the assets. So these are the points of conflict between the scholars. And there is a criticism against the Ijara Sukuk as well. So there are 3 points where the criticism comes. Like first of all, guarantee in Sukuk issuance. So there are different guarantees. There is a guarantee provided by the third party that the face value of the issue of the Sukuk certificates will not reduce, and this guarantee is provided by a third party. But actually that third party is the stakeholder, the main stakeholder, the originator. For example, in case of Wabda Sukuk, we discussed, Wabda would provide the guarantee that the investor's investment in the Sukuk certificates will remain intact and it will be redeemed at its face value, whereas the subject matter of that transaction was those Wabda turbines, and after the tenure of that Sukuk transaction, the value of those turbines might be lesser. So in that case, the Sukuk certificates should be redeemed accordingly, and the loss in the value should be distributed among all the all the Sukuk holders. But here there is a guarantee by the originator, which is supposed to be a third party here, that the Sukuk certificates will be redeemed at their face value. So this guarantee of the face value, and then the guarantee of the return, which is the benchmark is taken as KIBOR, Karachi Interbank Offer Rate, or LIBOR, London Interbank Offer Rate, plus any percentages of points. And the first collective resolution issued by the Islamic Fiqh Academy in its resolution 35/4 pertaining to Ijara Sukuk Islamic Fiqh Academy had the ruling that there is no Sharia objection to mention into the prospectus of the issue or in the documents of sukuk the promise of a third party who is independent personally and in terms of financial liability from the two parties to the contract. So if the third party which guarantees the value of the sukuk certificates, that they will not lose their value, that third party, if it is independent party which is not related to both of these parties, which is considered to be the special purpose vehicle and the sukuk investors. So the originator is supposed to be a third party here. So the Islamic Fiqh Academy, they think this is allowed. The Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions, they issued a Sharia standard number 17 on investment of sukuk. They say that the prospectus must not include any statement to the effect that the issuer of the certificate accepts the liability to compensate the owners of the certificates up to the nominal value of the certificate. That is, the face value of those certificates cannot be guaranteed by the issuer and it should not be mentioned into the prospectus of those sukuk certificates. But under one certain circumstances only, that is, in a situation other than torts and negligence, but there is only one exception, that there is no misuse or negligence on the part of the special purpose vehicle, that is the company established by the originator, and that they cannot mention the guarantees of a fixed percentage of profit, and at the same time they cannot guarantee the fixed return on these sukuk certificates. It is, however, permitted to an independent third party to provide a guarantee free of charge. But they say the Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institution, they say that in the prospectus of any sukuk, it cannot be mentioned that the sukuk certificates will be guaranteed in terms of their capital and also in terms of their return. But if there is a negligence, then they will be compensated for that. But if any third party guarantees such type of insurances, in that case it is allowed if that third party is not related to the issuer or the originator and the certificate holders. So whereas guaranteeing of capital is prohibited by all schools of Islamic law. So here you can see, although it is guaranteed by a third party, but according to the basic instructions, the basic rules and regulations of the fiqh, all school of thought, they are unanimous on this version, on this point, that guaranteeing of capital is prohibited in any kind of ventures in the Islamic financial system. And even if the third party guaranteeing the capital is government, it shall be declared non-permissible, as the government treasury is the property of the whole community. So here, if the third party is the government, so in that case, it should not be allowed again, because government has the public treasury and it is the ownership of all the people, and it should not be exposed to any type of risk or to any capital loss. So the scholars, a group of scholars, they say the third party guarantee, if it is a government or any public entity, it should not be there. And the second point of criticism is that the sale and lease back structure. The originator sells the asset to the issuer, which is the special purpose vehicle, and then lease it back again. So this process, this phenomena has also been questioned by the scholars, that whether it is Sharia compliant or not. And then the third objection is pricing of the sukuk. Muslim economists and Sharia scholars have not come up with an alternative to the interest rate as a readily available indicator of profitability. Hence, the use of LIBOR or KIBOR as a benchmark has become part of the practice in Islamic financial institutions. So the use of benchmark is the interest mechanism which is being practiced by the conventional financial system. So the scholars and the experts of Islamic financial system, they have not come up with any solution. Whenever the people, the public, they see that in the Islamic financial system, the terminology is different, but the underlying calculations, they are based on the benchmarks of the conventional financial system. So there arises the perception problems. So they think, the ordinary people, they think they are the same thing with only a difference of terminology. And continuing with the third criticism, that is pricing of skook. However, in practice, this return is not at all reflecting the rental of the underlying asset, but the prevalent interest rates. And even if the rentals are the sources of income, but you will see in different ijara skook arrangements that the rentals, they represent almost the equal interest rate. If you invest into bonds or if you invest into skooks, you will get almost similar type of returns. So the interest is the benchmark, whether the underlying asset is earning more or less, because it is claimed in Islamic financial system, the source of return is the underlying asset. So if the asset is returning more, even then the standard, the benchmark is the conventional interest rate, and even if the underlying asset is earning lesser, still the skook holders, they are being paid at the same rate, which is the benchmark of interest rates of financial economic system, a conventional financial system. However, it is observed that same rate of return as reflecting the prevailing interest rate is paid on them if they are used as underlying asset for two different skook issues. If there are two different skook issues with different nature of assets underlying them, still the returns, they are same. So it again creates a controversy, it creates a doubt. Now let's see the practices in case of ijara skook. So in case of ijara skook, the originator that require financing, the originator will establish the SPV. The originator, they will establish an SPV, that is special purpose vehicle, which is a separate legal entity, and actually they have a name, but we are simply using the special purpose vehicle, which is a mechanism. The name can be anything, like in the case of Wabda Skook, special purpose vehicle was First Wabda Skook Company. Okay, so the SPV doesn't mean that this is a vehicle. Actually, this is a mechanism that can interact with the investors. So this SPV would contact or would sell the skooks to the investors. The skook certificates are sold to the investors and cash proceeds, they are received. And then this originator who established this SPV, again the same originator, I draw it separate just to show you different roles of the skook, of the originator, that the same originator will sell the asset which is already in possession of the originator. Like in the case of Wabda, the turbines which were already installed and they were being used by Wabda, they sold those turbines to SPV. So the asset which is already in use of the originator is sold to the SPV against the cash which the SPV received from the skook holders. Now this is a sale contract. Now this is a sale contract, a sale of an asset against a price. Now the asset is in the ownership of the SPV, but that asset is still with the originator, and to justify that there is a lease contract between the originator that now the asset is given back to the originator against the lease payment. There is a lease contract between the originator and the asset. Now all these transfer of ownership, they are in documents. Physically, asset was with the originator and it will remain with the originator. And then after a time period, when the lease contract expires, maybe for 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, whatever is the duration, then the asset will be purchased back by the originator against a price. A price will be paid to the SPV, and then this price, and before that these rental amounts, they will be distributed among the investors of the skook holders. This rental income goes to the skook certificate holders, and then when the price is paid to the SPV, that price is paid back to the investors. And proportionately, the skooks, they are redeemed. Price is paid to redeem the skooks. Now, the assets price 6, 7, 8 years before and assets price at the moment of its redemption of the skook should be different. But in this case, the face value is guaranteed by the originator. Again, originator assumes itself as a third party and guarantee the face value of the skook certificates. So you can see here there are so many roles of the originator. First of all, the originator establishes the SPV, special purpose vehicle. Then the originator sells the asset to the SPV, then lease it back the same originator, then purchases the same asset at the fourth step from the SPV, and then finally provides the guarantee assuming itself as a third party. So you can see so many roles of the same party which is questioned by the scholars. And then guaranteeing the face value, that is guaranteeing the capital of the investors, it is against the Sharia laws. So these are the point of conflicts or the controversies which are seen in the practices of Islamic financial institutions. So it makes it doubtful, and the perception created in the market is a negative perception. And we need to rectify the perception by amending all these problems. We need to create harmony among the Sharia scholars' fatwas and their thinkings, and the rules and regulations should be same all over the Islamic world as far as the Islamic financial system is concerned. So in conclusion, a variety of target-specific skooks can be issued, return on which will be either variable or fixed, not absolutely fixed. Returns may be fixed, but it can vary according to the return of the underlying asset. The special purpose vehicles or the fund managers have to bear the ownership-related expenses or risks and distribute the net proceeds from the business among the skook holders. However, there is provision of any third-party guarantee can be mentioned there. Skook are widely regarded as controversial due to their perceived purpose of evading the restrictions on riba, and conservative scholars don't believe that this is effective, citing the fact that a SAK or an Islamic bond effectively requires payment for the time value of money. So here the concept of time value of money is involved here, and the group of scholars that think that time value of money might be equivalent to riba, so there is a problem here. And there is a need to ensure the investment of skook are based on halal activities and no riba transaction. And the core activities which are being conducted with the skook funds, they should be Sharia compliant. So these were the different features, different characteristics of the skooks, their applications we discussed in this lecture. To summarize the lecture, in this lecture we studied different aspects of popular skooks like skook al-murabaha, skook, salam skook, and istisna skook, and also the skook growth in the world, how they are growing, what is the phenomena of their growth, and what are the areas where the skooks have been invested, and what type of public sector entities they are issuing skooks. And also we discussed the controversies in different types of skooks, particularly in ijara. And then there are differences between skook and bonds. We also summarize them as well. So that's all for today, and we will see you inshallah in the next lecture. Till then, Assalamu alaikum.